Everyone, welcome to the TDR Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Midweek. Hope you had a good week last night. Great news out of Ohio, to say the least, and a lot of positive momentum growing here in the industry. We're also, what's the reason why that you should watch this podcast here? This is the TDR Traded Black podcast on the Gonzaga Television Network, and the reasons why we break down the latest earnings for both Verano and Village Farms. Were they good? In addition, last night, Ohio becomes the 24th state in the country to legalize adult use cannabis. And don't look now, we're also getting some positive momentum in Florida regarding their first hearing with the Supreme Court to have adult use included on the ballot. And why do we think that? We have political insider Brady Cobb joining us to share why he thinks it's positive and to talk furthermore to educate you on what you can anticipate on what's developing in Florida. So let's get right to it and welcome in, as usual, our two co-hosts, TDR financial writer Benjamin A. Smith, along with TDR millennial entrepreneur Anthony Varrell. Good day, gentlemen. And obviously we saw some good momentum first thing in the morning, kind of died out a little bit during the day. But regardless of all how the market performed, got some good news last night pertaining to Ohio becoming the 24th state, Anthony, to legalize adult use cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's progress in the right direction. It's an adult use amendment that's passed. It's another big market for tier one operators. I mean, you've got the cannabis with 5 retail locations in the state. AYR's got 2 that they announced this week, with a 3rd on the way. Trulieve has 5. Verano has 5. There's a lot of names that a lot of people are levered to and looking at that are levered to this state. As it relates to the actual ballot initiative now getting implemented into law, they've got a 30-day they've got a 30-day timetable to write it into law, and then they have up until September 2024 to actually implement the adult use provisions, and the market goes live. So we've got, could be 60 days that we see adult use cannabis in Ohio. Could be September of 2024. I'm going to assume it's probably going to fall in the sweet spot of somewhere in the middle there. Via it not getting challenged or having any sort of legal challenging to what just happened. But the people have spoken, and they want adult use cannabis in the state of Ohio. Yeah,
and we're seeing more of a growing trend of conservative states changing their stance on cannabis, which is a telling sign, to say the least. With the approval rate was actually through the roof last night. So all in all, I think that's an interesting stat to look at as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a growing trend. I mean, conservatives are loosening up. I mean, it's a sign of the times. There's the millennials are starting to actually have carry weight within these parties. I mean, the good old boys of the 1970s and 1980s and Reefer Madness and the war on drugs, and that's really fading out. I mean, it's people chose to elect, or people chose to vote in regards to choice yesterday in the state of Ohio. Choice to consume cannabis at the adult use level, choice to abortion. I mean, these are growing trends and narratives that I'm sure are going to be tonight on the Republican debate. And they're going to be growing narratives that are going into the 2024 election.
Yeah, that's for sure. Lucas, got your note. Yes, the results won't be in until April, but the first hearing was a positive one. And how do we know that? We actually are going to be coming up in a little bit. Cannabis political insider Brady Cobb will be joining us. But Anthony, you outlined as well 5 retail locations for the Cannabis Company Holdings, another 5 for Trulieve, another 5 for Verano, AYR with 2 with 3 on the way. So a good presence within that state.
Yeah, it'll be good. I mean, it's good to see. It'll be good to see the incremental revenue come in at that point in time when they do roll out on the balance sheets of the MSOs. And I think it'll probably be something like Maryland.
Yeah,
we'll start to see it slowly roll out, and you'll see good growth at the beginning. I mean, a lot of people are saying that 2 states went legal last night, with Indiana neighboring Ohio. You're going to start to see people jump the border from Indiana to go into Ohio to purchase adult use cannabis, much like we've seen Ohio jump into the state of Michigan to purchase adult use cannabis.
Yeah. Still waiting to see Brady Cobb. He'll be joining us any moment. Let's jump into headline number 2, Verano Holdings. Actually, you know what? We just actually brought him. He is now in. Mitch, you want to bring up Brady right now? Mitch, you there?
Yeah, just give him 2 seconds here so he's ready there.
Okay.
All right, I think he's ready to go now. All right, let's bring him on in here.
Cool.
Thank you, sir. All right, there he is. Good to see you, sir. How's things?
I'm living, boys. How are you?
What's up, sir?
Surviving.
How's everything going?
Yeah,
Good, man. Good. Surviving and advancing. Was at the farm earlier this week and was in Palm Beach today at the store listening to the Supreme Court hearing on the train ride up. So it's been quite the day.
So you felt that first hearing was a positive one, correct? And if so, can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit, Brady?
That's actually, that will be the only hearing. So there will not be an additional hearing. This is anytime you have a Supreme Court, remember this matter has been fully briefed, and I just, Kim and I always have had our issues, but I want to give her and Trulieve and Smart and Safe a tremendous amount of credit. They've prepared this, they put their money where their mouth is, and they filed a brief, and brief this is probably some of the best briefing I've seen on this issue before. So I want to give a shout out to them. They did an absolutely tremendous job. And no one should be taking credit for anything relative to this if it actually happens or doesn't happen other than them. They did a great job. So be that as it may, when every time this matter gets kind of like this gets fully briefed, and one of the first questions out of the gate by a justice is that he's baffled by the Attorney General's opinion, that's about as good of a statement as you can have in open court at that level. Because remember, law clerks have read all of this and they have synthesized and put together the key issues and the questions for the justices. And as they select what they're going to ask, it's a pretty big deal. My general counsel, chief legal officer was in the room. He's usually about as bearish as they get. He was relatively positive. As I'm counting votes, you kind of could potentially see a 5-4 or 6-3 in favor. And with the key issue being whether there's confusion as to whether the amendment would make it legal under federal law, the disclaimer speaks very clearly to that, which is what Justice Labarga jumped all over when he said he was baffled. So I've seen stranger things. When I was a trial lawyer back in my trial lawyer days, I won a case and thought I crushed it on appeal and ultimately lost. And all the oral arguments at appeal were great questions for me. And I thought I crushed it. The other side thought I beat them. They actually took me out for a drink afterwards. And then I ended up fucking losing. So you don't necessarily know. That's what I tweeted out. You don't necessarily know until it's all said and done. But it was a very interesting couple of signs. You guys know I'm a big sign, not signal person. And number one, that AG Moody didn't appear herself.
Sometimes what was up with that? Like, is that a good sign or a bad sign or kind of just a nothing burger?
To me, and I might be the only one with a tinfoil hat here, but on high-profile issues that they know are going to get press, generally the statewide attorney general, which is an elected official, will show up herself or himself. If it's a big enough issue, if it's one they think is hotly contested, her not being there tells me that they kind of know that they're not on the strongest of ground and send the other attorney in the office to go, get shot at for an hour or so. Secondarily, I didn't really hear anything in the way of either questions or, argument from either the Florida Chamber of Commerce or the Attorney General that made me really question that it wasn't on solid ground. It's just, we got to see how ultimately, you never know how this is going to spin out. The other thing is the oral argument could have been scheduled for any day. It was scheduled the day the results are coming out of Ohio, which is probably arguably two biggest swing states that are going to come up in this 2024 presidential election are always Florida and Ohio. So it's a very interesting scheduling note. Again, I'm accused of having a tinfoil hat all the time. So, take that with a grain of salt. But her not appearing in person was interesting for me to see on when I tuned in and watched the stream.
So question, there's been I've seen a lot of like kind of backhanded comments today about Ohio. They're like, so the older voters, the geriatric voters that went out to the polls, they were voting against issue 2. How does Florida ever get it above 60%, especially because of the amount of geriatrics in the state of Florida? Me being from Florida, you growing up in Florida, I'd be willing to say that the geriatric population in Florida is different than the one in Ohio. Yeah. There's a lot of people 65 and up in South Florida on both coasts are consumers. They're more liberal. They're more liberal than what you see in Ohio.
For sure.
Yes, we have that 60% hurdle, but at least it's my 2 cents that I think we can get past that, and you're not going to see the activism from the older crowd as it relates if it gets on the ballot.
I think that's a good take. From being in our stores quite a bit, that's one of our bigger consumer groups is kind of the over 65 year age, consumer who's coming in. So that's number one. And number two, look at the net population gain in Florida since COVID, and the bulk of those people are moving here.
What is that like? Do you know?
It's a big number. I can pull it for you, but it's millions of people.
And that's not slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, and you've got to look where they're coming from. I saw a great stat on CNBC the other day. It's primarily California, Seattle,
New York.
Oregon, New York, Illinois, and what's legal in all those states? Adult use cannabis.
Yeah.
So they're used to being able to go to a dispensary and buy what they want and not have to go get a medical card they got to renew every 270 days. So it's a bit of a if you're going to have a net population gain, as much as I don't like the traffic, it's a pretty good net population gain to have ahead of an election.
Yeah.
Hey, Brady, how much do you trust the Florida justices to actually render a decision on the merits of the case as opposed to getting political? And even if they do get political, does it stand a good chance to pass? Because most conservatives probably at this point support cannabis legalization in general.
I think that's a great, and the last part of that question says a lot. So it's a different conservative group, and for as much as DeSantis has made comments on the campaign trail in Iowa and elsewhere about cannabis, he is the guy that legalized flower here in Florida, and as someone that's worked with his office, he's been supportive of cannabis. I used to call on him when he was in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he was one of the few friendly faces we had when we were going around talking about, safe banking and the Robacher Amendment back in the early days, because he believed in, veterans, because he's a veteran, being able to access this instead of opioids. But on the justices, the nice part about what's in front of them right now is it's a relatively, if you heard from the comments in the hearing, it's a relatively streamlined review process that we're in right now. It's single subject, and whether it's confusing to voters. So we're not talking about an abortion law that's, an up or down vote on whether abortion should be legal in Florida. It's not an up or down vote on whether cannabis should be legal in Florida. It's whether the wording of the amendment is in such a way that it would confuse Florida voters. And I think we heard from them today, especially from Justice Aparga, how he's just baffled that the argument against it. So politicizing it, it's the number one, to be completely candid, the political nature of it around a 2020 election and Republicans being worried potentially that, voters are going to come out and vote in favor of it and then vote down ballot Democrat. That's probably the biggest political issue that we have. And I think that's a great question that not a lot of people are talking about, because that is something in Republican circles and leadership are worried about is, okay, how do we address this? And more importantly, can we stop it? If we can't stop it, how do we seize it? So there's outside chitter chatter speculation that if it actually gets on the ballot, it might be something that the legislature wants to take up to do themselves in the 2024 legislative session, which runs from March to May, to try to steal the issue from Democrats. Again, that is you're talking about long shot conspiracy theories, but
They could do that though.
They could do it, and it's been trickling around. And as you saw with the Disney stuff, when the governor says he wants to do something, the legislature falls in line.
Yeah.
So, as I put that at like 1% or less, but they're worried about it enough as a ballot issue to draw voters out, especially voters from these places, these other states that are moving here that already have adult use cannabis that are going to be supportive of it. They're worried about it enough that it's being talked about in those circles.
Yeah.
So I'm less worried about the court, so to say, because it's such a confined review process. It's not an up or down vote on the validity of a given issue. But it's, you can never turn politics off. And as someone that lived and died in Tallahassee politics for close to 8 years, it's about as politicized. Everybody in Tallahassee thinks they're in DC.
Interesting. You make a good point, though, and Anthony, you did as well, that a 65-year-old's lifestyle in Florida is a lot different than somebody who lives in Ohio, right?
No, man, look at all the retirement communities in Orlando and Central Florida. They're all driving around on golf carts with margarita machines and vape pens.
Yeah, they're having a great time.
They're having a great time. It looks fun. I mean, those people are going to go out and vote for adult use cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Florida culturally is much different than Ohio.
Yeah.
Much different. And by the way, the other thing just to remember is, Florida right now, our medical program, the government generates zero tax off it because it's constitutionally exempt from tax. So they're seeing, as Governor DeSantis has said, he thinks cannabis companies are, should have to pay more for the license to play ball here. And that's largely because the state's watching these companies come in here, post these big sales numbers, and then ultimately not have to pay any tax on it whatsoever. Adult use cannabis is taxed. It'd be fully taxed. So I've actually been working on a white paper that to hand to the governor's office, basically, that would allow the governor's office, with a tax on cannabis, to be able to pay down all Floridians' property taxes by a certain amount. So that you get a notice in the mail saying your tax bill is less as a result of a tax on adult use cannabis. So turning a negative into a positive. And that to me, is a way for even the most hardcore staunch Republicans to turn a negative into a positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Brady, when do you expect the decision to actually be rendered? Because I've been reading that it could happen by April of 2024, but given that it's not, it doesn't seem to be a complicated issue, could it actually come much sooner?
It could. I mean, I would say at a minimum, it's kind of January would be the front line of when we could see it. And I think April would be the kind of the back end of when we could see it. It all depends on, at a minimum, where the amendments have failed here in the past is they didn't get to the court in time. So in the last amendment that was sponsored by Cetera and MedMen as captains of the Titanic, that thing got to the court in like January it got to a point where they could get to the court in like January of the election year. Oral arguments weren't till the spring, and the ballots had already been printed post the primaries.
Yeah.
So it couldn't even, you get the clock run out on you. And that one was a flawed amendment in the sense that it included both adult use cannabis and home grow. So it was found to have violated the single subject rule, which is why kudos to Kim and her legal team and the Smart and Safe legal team. As much crap as she took from patients and advocates for not having home grow in there, it set it up to actually be something that could survive this level of review. Because if it had home grow in there, the hearing today would have been vastly different.
Do you think incrementally we get home grow down the road if and when this is passed?
I don't know. I mean, it'd be legislative, and I don't see the sheriff's associations of Florida wanting that. I mean, I don't personally, I don't oppose it at all. If for me, I take the same stance as beer companies. Like if people want to try to brew beer in their garage, knock yourself out. You're still coming to the store to buy my beer when yours isn't so good.
I was just going to say that. I mean,
go ahead. Go ahead.
If we had home grow tomorrow, I'd probably have 3 or 4 plants that I'm growing. But I'm a realist. I'm still going to go to your dispensary to pick up product.
Well, especially in Florida, right? Where
it's a pure science project.
It's just the conditions aren't that great, right?
No.
You get like 3. I mean, for a few of the groups down here that try to get outdoor biomass turned, you're lucky to get 1 turn a year.
Yeah. And then you got to dry and cure and trim. It's a pain.
We saw that in Canada and Ontario. The guy that lives on the 24th floor in a condo building in downtown Toronto was pushing for it. You think he's going to be like, oh, I'll grow it once. You think he's going to continue on that? Like, fuck that. I got people coming over in 3 minutes. What are you going to do? That doesn't
Send me some fucking pre-rolls quick.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So I wouldn't buy into that too much. No. Overall, though, you, Anthony, you guys are in Florida. This is our world. This is what we talk about. But when you look at this as a main priority amongst Floridians, conversations that you have, the people that you speak with, how much is this a priority to get adult use legalized amongst, citizens that live within the state?
I know it's funny. It's 3-4 years ago, I'd say very minimal outside of industry folks, but I can tell you over the last 12 to 24 months, really kind of starting with COVID and people being cooped up and having to deal with kids. And you saw really a very quick uptick in the patient count in Florida. We hear it all the time.
So
and I hear it from
changed everything. You think?
I hear it from family members. I hear it from, family members that were, opposed to it previously a lot of them don't want to deal with the medical card. They want to be able to go buy it. And I think it's why you're seeing all these D8 and D9 shops proliferate and do so well, is because it's a category people want to be a part of, especially, there's the older community, but especially the younger community. If you look at the data coming out of the alcohol world, cannabis, especially amongst younger consumers, is very quickly taking huge, tons of share from alcohol.
I don't know how many parents I talk to who have kids that are 19, 20 years old. They're at prom and they're like, they don't drink at all. And you see that everywhere.
No, it's crazy. I was reading an article on that the other day. They want to actually be in control of the situation and they want to actually be able to remember what they're doing.
Yeah.
Blackout.
They don't want to be hungover. The biggest thing I always hear is people don't want to be hungover. I mean, amongst my segment, I'm 42 years old. Amongst the people that I hang out with, people I never in a million years would I ever have thought would use cannabis or reaching out saying, hey, what do I have to do to get a card? I want to try this. Because I tried a gummy at a dinner party. I had a great night and I wasn't hungover the next day. That is what's coming.
It's funny because all of those people turn into consumers. None of them are ever like, oh yeah, this sucked. I definitely don't want to do that moving forward. It's more so, well, how can I access this?
Correct. And you got to go to it. You got to go. And the biggest thing for Florida is tourists. Tourists will be tourists. I mean, we're 118 million visitors that will be in and out of the state that are over the age of 21 between visitors and residents who could be purchasers. That puts Florida as probably 1 or 2 in the world as far as market size. Yeah. It's a big market.
Yeah. one comment earlier was that there's a lot of universities too in the state. And before I let you go, don't
I
look
mean,
now.
Brady's got. You should see where Sunburn is in Tallahassee.
It's a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
It's a real good. It's a real good spot.
Are you
And
near the
don't-
campus? University of Florida, right?
No, we're at Florida State, and we're actually we're right near campus. But the really cool thing, my team was able to make great inroads with the university. Most of our 3 or 4 of our guys on our management team all went to Florida State, so they have a big farmers market at Florida State every Thursday at the student union, and we are the only cannabis company that has a booth and a whole deal. And we have had a picture with the president of the university the other day. It's Florida State is turning out to be. I was there for the Duke game, and our hats and our stuff was everywhere on campus.
Are you going up for the Canes? Are you going up for the Canes game? This
I'm home. My daughter's got she rides horses. She's got a horse show this weekend, or I'd be there, but I'll be tuning in at 3:30 somewhere, screaming at the TV.
Actually, one last question I have to ask you, Brady. I know we're going up against the clock here, but I wanted to get your input on where you actually got the marketing for Sunburn Cannabis, because I've noticed it's very different from anything else we've seen. It's not. It's more retro. It's more like got a late 70s, 80s feel.
The lifestyle.
And I think it's actually really good because nobody else is doing it that way, and I think it's very smart.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. We built it ourselves. So we actually we actually had 2 outside agencies. One of them's doing the Olympics in LA. 2 big CPG agencies that we ultimately parted ways with, and we brought it all in house. We do it ourselves, and it's all I built a little team, and they're killing it. And the whole key is we have our core tenets, and we stick to them, and we're not afraid to take shit for it. And we understand that we're completely different than everybody else, and it all ties back to the Sunburn story as a whole. My father's smuggling ring and all the 1970s, 1980s, when America was allowed to have fun again, when the world, quite candidly, was allowed to have fun again. You rode in your mom's car without a seatbelt on. You were allowed to. Not everything was polarizing. Not everything was, oh my God, the world's going to end. It was, go throw a bathing suit on, go to the beach, get fucked up, and have a good time. That's us. Yeah, that's us. Right? Trying to bottle all that up, but it's a strategy of video. Our biggest strategy, to be quite candid, is events.
Yeah.
So we lean heavy into events. If it's on the water or you play it loud, those are our 2 tenets for events. We're there. Music shows, festivals, concerts, surf contests, fishing tournaments, anything where people in Florida are having fun. I have somebody there capturing data and interacting with people and talking about the brand story, and then we film all of it too.
Last time I checked, too, most events held in Florida usually are a pretty good time, too, right?
They're a lot of fun. We got a couple of good ones coming up. You guys should come down in April for Tortuga, the music festival on Fort Lauderdale
I went
Beach.
last year. We're up in Benzenga, where there was like about 36 inches of rain in 3 days, and then I head up to Fort Lauderdale afterwards, and Jesus, what a shit show.
We got a whole setup there this year. It's cowboy boots and G-strings at the same time. It's quite the sight. It's quite the sight to see.
Well, nice location in Tallahassee. Pays to be an alumni. See, Florida State's fine. You don't need an Ivy League school like Georgetown, the Tim Seymour. Look what you got, brother.
Yeah, we're doing it. State school kids. A whole office full of state school kids. See what happens. We go to work when we're hungover. That's the difference.
Yeah, good point. Listen, appreciate you checking in, and let's keep in touch.
Great to see you guys as always.
Right.
Hey, thank you for the questions.
Such a great guy. Guy knows his shit, and what a brand he's building down there in Florida, huh?
I'm a consumer of the brand, so it's I stick to Sunburn and 710.
Yeah.
As far as Florida product goes.
Had a few comments asking about Cannabis earnings coming up tomorrow. We'll touch on that, I think, probably a little bit later, but that'll be an encouraging report that many people will be watching, especially with the direction of next steps for the company. Before we get into that, let's talk about earnings today. Verano Holdings, they posted their latest earnings, Ben. A big day for some of the biggest companies in the space, them, also Village Farms, but you mentioned this week that you're going to be looking for reports that look stable, and that's what we got with Verano, who came in line with expectations.
Yeah, 100%. I know it's not sexy. It's not the great, huge guidance raise or anything like that, but stability is exactly what we've seen here.
Yeah.
Revenue was basically in line with analyst estimates. Cash flow went up, which was great. That was sort of the big story here. Free cash flow went from about 16 million last quarter to 27 million. So big jump there.
Yeah.
And they also raised the free cash flow guidance for for the full year, for the rest of the year. They tightened up the range to 72 to 76 million, whereas last quarter they projected 65 to 70. So that's always a good sign when you're raising guidance. But otherwise, revenues beat, SG&A expenses were exactly the same as they were last quarter. And I don't see a lot of surprises here. Just, very stable business. They executed. And, predictably, the stock didn't really do all that much because, as we know, it's a very, very stable business. And that's actually a very good thing for the sector, that we don't have these huge ebbs and flows. Very stable. They executed, and a good report.
Yeah. Same thing. I think a lot of institutions don't want to look at stocks that rip 30-40%. It's the slow and steady, right?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know. I don't know about that. Institutions.
I mean, it'd be nice to rip
definitely
30%, but it's just, this is not the industry for that. This is not AI where you get a huge amount of orders based on everybody jumping into the next trend. This is stable consumer staples, and consumer staple companies are very, very predictable, stable, and you know what their sales are going to be.
Yeah. My point is that when you see a lot of stocks in the past rip 30-40%, it's followed by a pullback shortly after that. But let's move now. Go ahead.
Let's say the best part about this earnings report, and there's probably a lot of people on the stream that can appreciate that, they finally broke out their revenue by states on their earnings report. I've been waiting for this for years. It is the transparency that people want to see. They broke out all the revenue. Yeah, they broke out all the revenue into into retail and wholesale. On wholesale, gross and net, and then they broke down all of the sales by state for the quarter and the 9 months so far in the year. What I was surprised at is Florida is heavy on their revenue. Florida is their number one market at 53 million. Their number 2 and 3 markets combined, we're 60 million. That being New Jersey and Illinois. So I mean, they've got sleeping giants on this. They've got Pennsylvania that's sitting there waiting in the wings. Maryland, I feel like it's got room to grow, judging by the number that was extrapolated from there. And they've got Ohio, which we all know is coming. So I mean, this was good, and I'm hoping that this is a trend. I want to see GTI, Trulieve, the cannabis, have them all start to do this, because then we can really get a point of view as to what's going on in the states. And then we can actually see quarter over quarter what states are doing what. I mean, it gives you just more tools to do diligence with.
Yeah. Lucifer, good to see you. He writes, did they put how many stores per state based on those numbers?
No, but that's easy. They've all got presentations on their websites where you can go and see how many, and they break them down. I know the Cannabis and Verano actually break down in their presentations active dispensaries and dispensaries in development. So they make the line of delineation between the two. But you can break it out easily. But no, they did not include that, as it would have gotten pretty messy on the balance sheet.
Yeah. Before we get into Village Farms earnings, let's move now to Trulieve, who will be announcing their latest earnings tomorrow, but already making some news today for something separate that involved their current debt situation. Anthony, can you explain further? And because I think many in the space are trying to make sense of what this announcement means.
So this was interesting. I wasn't expecting to see this. Usually when you see a company come out with a press release that's retiring debt or redeeming notes, it's a net positive. I do think this is a net positive. However, it's got me scratching my head. So the complete position that they want to take out and they give the notice of redemption for was $130 million in debt instruments. Trulieve, as of last quarter, has $160 million in cash on the balance sheet. There's no way they're going to expend all of their cash to redeem these notes. I'd have to guess that there's going to be some sort of equity offering here coming up.
You think?
I don't really want. I mean, I don't even want to speculate. I mean, the money has to come from somewhere, and there's $130 million that needs to be created in value to redeem the notes. So simple math would tell you it's got to come from somewhere, and they're not going to raise debt to retire debt, I don't think. And they're not going to exhaust their cash to retire all that debt at once. They wouldn't be crippled, but they would be in a risky position as far as cash goes.
Especially at these prices.
Yeah. Maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe they're going to dump, let's say, $70 million of cash, raise $60 million in equity. It's obviously to be determined right now at these levels, though. To retire the whole 130 would be about a 15% dilutive event into the business. Not saying that they're going to do that, but those are just the numbers.
Big
I'm sure
number.
we're going to get commentary tomorrow on the earnings call in regards to this. You can bet your ass analysts are going to be asking questions around this. And I'm sure by this time tomorrow, we're going to have a full 360 view on what is going on in regards to redeeming and settling these debt instruments that are currently traded on the CSE.
Yeah. This is the TDR Traded Black podcast here on the Benzaga Television Network. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with Benjamin A. Smith and Anthony Varrell. We're breaking down some of the earnings as we are in full swing earnings season. We talked about Canopy and Trulieve, their earnings tomorrow as well. Verano's today, which was stable, which we're looking for. Next up, Ben, Village Farms. This is a company that has 4.5 million square footage within the state of Texas. Released their latest earnings. They obviously have a footprint in the U.S. Should we start to see some sort of change in legislation, but maybe outline some of the numbers that you saw and what your overall thought was based on their latest report.
Yeah, the overall revenue just came slightly below analyst expectations, 69.5 million. I think the big takeaway here, again, nothing really sexy or nothing too notable, no outlier situations or in the metrics, but a slight decrease in their cannabis sales from Pure Sun Farms and Rose Life Sciences. So some degradation on the overall sales number. Maybe that is due to price compression. I am not 100% sure on that. I did not attend the call, but they did generate a net income on their Canadian operations. And also, when you talk about Village Farms, you also have to talk about the fresh produce segment that they have. Sales were 35.7 million compared to 35.5 million from a year ago. So it's stable business. I mean, what can you say?
GTI, by the way, just reported the Q.
Do you have preliminary numbers you can throw?
Decent numbers, yeah. 275 million for the quarter, increased 9% sequentially.
Wow.
83 million in EBITDA, or 30% of rev. Third quarter cash flow from operations, 61 million, bringing it 154 million in cash flow from operations year to date. Cash at the quarter was 137 million, and they actually did buy stock. They repurchased $25 million of stock, over 1% of the outstanding shares for the Q.
Oh,
so
wow.
That,
they actually did it, eh?
So
that was
did,
the big
so
thing going forward. Like some companies announce a share buyback program and never use it. They just want to kind of float it out there. And I guess they did.
I think Ben put his money where his mouth is. He bought $25 million worth of stock is a nice number.
I think this indicates that probably the only stock in this industry right now that can actually survive with 280E in place. But what a report. That's strong.
Yeah. Yeah, these are good. I'm obviously going to dig in more to them. I'm sure we'll have the full breakdown tomorrow. But that's the top line numbers. But I mean, the most impressive thing to see is that they actually did buy 25 million of their shares.
Yeah.
Probably
Maryland, I guess, contribute to that, right? And a couple of stores that they brought online is gets them up that 9% total.
I'm curious to dig in to see if they actually broke stuff down by state.
Yeah.
But we shall see. But they Green Thumb won our poll. I did a poll yesterday on the TDR Twitter. Who do you think is going to beat? Who do you think is going to beat or have the better beat sequentially? GTI or Verano? And it was GTI.
So sorry, what was the net income number? Because I know they're the outlier there. They're the only ones who are basically net income.
Net income for the third quarter was 11 million, or 5 cents per basic diluted share.
Wow. So in the black again.
Yeah,
they're the champions in this industry.
They're
100%.
They obviously know how to operate.
Just go about doing their business. By the way, Connor Smith writes, Village Farms stock up 6% after hours, Ben.
Yeah, I show it down 5.5% today. So I don't know, after hours, probably not a lot of share volume. Maybe it's just an outlier print from the beginning, but it wasn't really active today. Again, I would love to say that, these stocks, increase in price and they have these great earnings and all that, but this is really not the sector for that. It's not an earnings play sector.
Yeah. John Verville, I got an amazing. Go ahead.
Direct quote. Our third quarter performance was largely driven by the July 1st launch of adult use sales in Maryland.
There you
There you
go.
go.
That's directly from Ben Kovler.
And that's important because we've talked about on the broadcasts on several occasions how Maryland is going to contribute to the mid single digits to maybe up to 10% in most cases to the top line growth of these companies. It's going to be Maryland and then the 1 or 2 or 3 dispensaries that they open in other states in conjunction with that. So there it is. Right there.
And the 137 million cash is net of the share buyback.
Is net of the share.
Net of the share buyback.
Who would have thought Maryland? What a state! What a growth state that's turning into for many, huh?
Yeah.
John Verville, I've got an amazing news for you. We have confirmation. Zach George, CEO of SNDL, will be joining us on Monday to talk about their latest earnings. That podcast will be posted either late Monday evening or first thing Tuesday. So there you go, SNDL investors. We're bringing Zach on. Anthony and I are actually flying out to New York next week. We actually will be doing a cool little podcast from the Cannabis Company Holdings dispensary in Brooklyn, which will be pretty cool, on Wednesday, which is a week from today. But we'll have the podcast live stream next Monday as well next Friday. But during the week, we will be in Brooklyn doing some cool stuff with Nicholas Vita, the CEO. All right. Mitch actually just brought up the GTI chart right now. If you guys want to have a look at that right now, but should be a big day, I would think, for this company tomorrow.
Yeah, curious to see the action on the tape tomorrow.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, that wraps up the first segment, Into the Wire, highlighting all the biggest headlines in cannabis, psychedelics, and crypto today. Let's now dive into our second segment, which is our daily movers. Anthony, we begin with cannabis. As we said earlier, Trulieve announces their earnings tomorrow. This is a company you're watching. Why?
I think you should be watching Trulieve. I'm watching it very closely, especially after the announcement today. I want to see what's going to happen with the resolution of this debt redemption, what's going to bode well for them moving forward, what the cash position looks like, what the general health of the business looks like, what the growth in the business looks like. Trulieve also has Maryland, and they also have Ohio coming. So, and obviously they're the king in Florida. Yeah. There's a lot to like about Trulieve. I think there's a lot to look into with Trulieve, but I mean, Trulieve's starting to look very attractive. And I mean, getting the debt off the balance sheet to me is very important, but the question is at what cost? Same conundrum that we had with AYR.
Yeah. Well, you look at these Maryland numbers, as you said before, Cureleaf and MariMed, Marcus Smith, right, should be pretty good too. We shall see. That's for sure. Okay, so Trulieve is one you're watching. Next, let's go outside of cannabis, psychedelics, and crypto. And one industry that I think that we need to cover more and more is the AI industry, Symbotic, which trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol SYM. This is grabbing your attention, Ben. Why?
Yeah, I had to go outside the cannabis realm with this one. This used to be a high flyer. This company is the maker of AI-powered robotic and software platform. And it's weak today. So it caught my attention mainly because it was a laggard. So all the AI stocks like Palantir and so forth were about even on the day, maybe down 1 or 2%. And this was down about 6% on the day. So it was lagging by a good 4 or 5% from its peers. And then I'm looking at 30 level as being key support. I know they have upcoming earnings on November 20th, and I'm not sure why it's weak. Maybe they haven't pre-announced. Sometimes for high flyer early growth companies, if they don't pre-announce, there's the expectation that it's going to be an inline quarter, and they need growth to sustain that price momentum. So I'm just looking at it for now, see if it gets to 30 support and kind of see where it goes from there. And also looking in earnings November 20th. No action on my end right now.
Good to know. Ben, we'll keep sticking with you now to the psychedelic space in Sibin, which trades in the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol CYBN. Groundbreaking trial results that we covered last week. This stock is seeing a lot of red this week. Many investors probably feeling this was a sell-on news event. Do you think, or do you agree with that?
Yeah, first of all, Sibin is a client of TDR, so everybody should know this. Do not act on this information. But we do cover the stock quite closely. And I think it's retraced basically to the small pharma levels when it announced that acquisition. It's right near those levels, and of course we had that big run up to the yearly highs after they consolidated their DMT platform, giving them a deuterated and an IV option. So they are the clear leaders for that exciting compound in the space. And then of course they announced those interim results. And if you haven't taken a look at those results, I urge you to do that if you're interested in the psychedelic space, because the MATTR scores were unprecedented. And we've interviewed Doug, and like I haven't seen anything like that. Usually for depression, for SSRIs, for example, the matter scores would decrease like 3, maybe 4 points. Their CYB003 compound decreased matters by 14. And if it holds up in phase 3 and it's got a good safety profile, this is going to be $1 billion drug.
Yeah.
Because even something like Spravato and ketamine, it wouldn't be anything close to that. So I'm watching it because the full results are going to come before year end, and we're going to get the 16 milligram dose instead of just the 12. So I'm going to see if that is more efficacious than the 12 milligrams. If it is, then we have a really exciting story brewing here.
Yeah, Lorenzen spitting facts out here. Sibin was due to drop since it was the only one holding up, which definitely has been the case. This industry has been hit hard over the last couple of months. Final company we're looking at as we switch to crypto, Anthony, and it's Chainlink, which seems to be moving quite a bit.
I brought it up about a month ago. It's up 93%.
93%
since then. Yeah. It's up about 30%, 27% on the week. It's up, I think, 12% on the day. It's starting to move again. Like I said, it's one of those altcoins that's been coiled up for a long time. It's days due. Yeah. It got really beaten up in the crypto drawdown. They're shipping product now. Their oracles and their data is integral to any business that wants to be levered to the blockchain. There are competitors out there, but I mean, Eric Schmidt's on the board. Chainlink's been around since the inception of really the whole blockchain movement. And I mean, I think Link and Chainlink will be one of the main beneficiaries of the next crypto rally. I mean, the assets speaking for itself right now.
Over 90% in the past month.
93% in the last month.
Wow. What a return.
Yeah. It's outperforming pretty much everything right now in the sector in regards to Sol, Cardano, Bitcoin, ETH. Not saying it's better, but it's definitely got momentum on its side right now.
Yeah. And if those want to learn more about crypto, we actually have Mark Yusko on tomorrow, which would be a really good podcast.
I will be talking to him. I'll be talking to him about Link.
Yeah. Very smart guy. That's for sure. We've had him on a few times as well. You mentioned earlier about the interview that we did with Doug Drysdale, Ben. We actually have it on our YouTube channel, The Dales Report, under the playlist Psychedelics. But we had a, like I said, interview last week with Doug, who outlined some of the results. So if you want to learn more, make sure to go to our YouTube channel and you can learn more. Okay, that wraps up segment 2, which is our Daily Movers. This is the TDR Trade of Black podcast here on the Benzinga Television Network. Good show today, gents, as we're just getting started during earnings season. Lots to talk about again. Might have to do a live stream again tomorrow. What do you guys think?
Probably. Cannabis Earnings are tomorrow. So, I mean, I think we should be covering them. And I mean, just so everybody knows, Marimed, Trulieve, Curaleaf, Canopy, TerraSend, and Aurora are all tomorrow. So we probably will be on stream breaking down several of those. I'd like to get Jason Wild on or Ziad to talk TerraSend. Yeah. And then, I mean, I've already reached out to Kim in regards to Trulieve, and I am actually looking forward to Canopy Growth's earnings.
Me too. Canopy,
looking forward to seeing what's going on.
Canopy, Trulieve, TerraSend, Marimed, who else?
Aurora,
and
Curaleaf, if you didn't say that.
I would actually argue that the earnings of companies like Canopy Growth, even Aurora Cannabis, are actually more interesting to me right now because of the stableness that we talked about with GTI and some of the tier ones. We know what it's going to be. Even when like states report how much cannabis sales were generated for that month, doesn't matter what state. They're very, very stable. Like, you know what they're going to be. They're within a very short band. You don't know how much their cash flow or how much their loss is going to be. It fluctuates wildly based on.
I heard BioSteel too was weighing down the bottom line considerably. So I'm looking at a
guys. You seeing that big announcement on Twitter? Is that pertaining to?
I'm not on Twitter right now. So what is it?
Sorry, which big announcement?
I don't know. John Verville just wrote a big announcement on Twitter.
Actually, Kronos was out today with earnings as well.
Kronos are boring.
Took a look at that. Yeah, it's really nothing going on. Sales are, it just, they still have that $840 million cash hoard. So kudos for the Kronos group for
Look at that
Gorenstein
chart.
and them for at least not buying into cannabis assets too early and overpaying. At least they saved their hoard, so now they're all set up for when to get in at the right
Tell
time.
you what, they better be getting 5% on that money.
Huh.
Yeah, I should look at what the investment income is on the balance sheet on the earnings report.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know. I wonder what
Yeah.
they invested.
All right. So quick recap. Brady Cobb provided some pretty good insight on the hearing in the state of Florida, and he thought it was a positive outcome, outlining some of the reasons why Attorney General, what's her name? Ashley Moody did not attend, which is rather interesting. Positive momentum building in Florida, as I said, as well. Verano announced the latest earnings, what we describe as being stable, which is key right now. Village Farms met or did not meet expectations, missed expectations by a little, but their stock is trading at 6% after market. And finally, we're watching Trulieve end of day today and first thing tomorrow as they gear up for the latest earnings, along with a plethora of big time companies. Gents, get prepared tomorrow because we will probably have an hour to an hour and a half podcast trying to basically outline everybody that's going to be reporting tomorrow, but it's going to be a busy day. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It will be a busy day this week. Doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah. Have fun watching the latest debate tonight. Curious to see how this is going to unfold. Man, has it been a train wreck, the last one?
Oh, there's actually one. I wanted to give John this answer real quick about 280E.
Yeah.
So they're not going to, I don't know if they're going to claim overpayment retroactively. There's some MSOs that are actually loaning themselves the 280E money as paying the penalty is less than paying the interest rate on a debt instrument. There's a lot of opacity about what these companies are actually going to be doing. And there's a lot of them that are going about it different ways from a tax strategy standpoint. So, I mean, this is going to be a moving situation, and there's really going to be no clarity until we understand the environment that we're actually in on the back end, on the backside of SAFE, as well as Schedule 3. So once those implications are once it's actually implemented, we'll be able to know. But it's a pretty dynamic situation for all the MSOs involved.
Yeah. Another thing I want to mention too is we just announced a new playlist on our YouTube channel that's going to cover real estate. It's being hosted by Todd C. Slater. He actually had the #1 radio show across the country in Canada, but this is an entrepreneur that's grown his real estate portfolio from 20 million to 1.3 billion in 10 years. Has a lot to offer and is a contractor. And the man does not want to sell you on anything. So if you want to know about trends related to real estate and how that's going to develop over the next 3 to 5 years, or more importantly, how to get started into investing in real estate, he's got some great podcasts that we kicked off this week, and an interesting person, to say the least. Huh, Anthony?
Yeah. Todd's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a plethora of knowledge. And I mean, unlike a lot of people, like he's done it. There's not a lot of people that can say I have 1.3 billion in real estate under management. I've done ground up construction on over $1 billion in real estate and done everything soup to nuts. Developed, financed, sold. He's got a lot to learn. I look forward to seeing what he's got to give in terms of knowledge.
Yeah. All right, gents. Listen, have a great evening, and we'll catch back up with both you guys tomorrow. Should be a busy day, and let us know. Do you think we should have another live stream tomorrow? Probably. Got a lot to dive into, so we will have you guys updated. Make sure to follow us actually on our Twitter account as well. We're providing live tweets throughout the day as we see it, and dive into obviously all these earnings reports tomorrow at 4:10. Gents, have a great evening.
Thanks.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget